Hello, everybody. Welcome to 4D Sports Talk here at the news station, 1320 AM Attleboro. I'm Justin Herrera, and first, a quick segment from our sponsor. This segment of 4D Sports Talk is made possible by the generous support of Diesel Direct. Diesel Direct, the national fuel resource in 46 states, boosts a fleet of over 900 fuel delivery trucks. 4D Sports Talk would like to congratulate Diesel Direct on its 25th year anniversary. Thank you, Diesel Direct, for your unwavering support, helping us provide a platform for high school and youth athletes in southeastern Massachusetts. So today, we have special guest Bob Fisher in today, and my first question for you is, what's it like to be the first college student to score 500?
That's a long time ago when I scored 500, but I was the first 500-point scorer at it's now Bentley University. Back when I played there was Bentley College. And I go way back to Bentley because I helped initiate the athletic program there. They didn't have any sports, and I came out of Quincy and loved basketball when I played at the high school at Quincy. And Bentley at that time was next to the Prudential Center in Boston on Boylston Street, Mass Ave. And it was just 2 or 3 buildings without any sports. They did have intramural skiing. I was not much into skiing in those days. I just liked the round ball. So I was fortunate to get a program started at Bentley, which has now become, one of the better Division II nationwide, both male and female. And being one of the first players at Bentley was fortunate enough to be the first player to score the 500 points before I graduated, because we only had 2 years of NCAA involvement at that time, and so it was fun. It was good. And now, if you score 500 points, that happens sometimes in a year with a three-point play shot. But back then, it was just 1 point for a free throw and 2 points for a basket.
Wow, you know what, Bob, I was thinking about as you were just talking about that. So I know Bentley is the big college for Division II regionals. Every year they play 9 times out of 10, they'll either play the men's and women's out of Bentley.
Correct.
Which is pretty cool. So before there was a 3-point shot arc, if you will, like I like to call them when I do the play-by-play, before they created the old arch, you were nailing them from downtown. Do you look at these guys and say to yourself, I used to do that, no problem, back in the day?
The person who was responsible for the 3-point line was a gentleman named Dr. Sykes out of Springfield College, the athletic director, and he was on a NCAA committee, and he thought the game was evolved with the big man too much, where they were throwing the ball into the post and roughing it up, and the guards weren't getting enough points in scoring because they were, more or less directed, get the ball to the block, because everybody had a 6'6", 6'8", 6'10", whatever it was back in those days. So he thought of something, the 3-point line, to bring the little man back into the game. So he was the pioneer of the 3-point man, Dr. Sykes from Springfield. Yes, we were shooting him back then from the 3-point line, getting only the 2 points. I don't know if we were shooting him as far back as they are now, because the line keeps going back and back. And I've been hearing discussions that might be a 4-point line in the NBA in the future and what have you. But I don't think of it that much because the game was so different back then. You had no shot clock back then. It was just played so differently back in those days. So I enjoyed playing it. Do I regret not being part of the 3-point shooting? Nope, because I enjoyed. It's like Cousy and all those guys, Russell for the Celtics. They enjoyed the time they played when they played. So it's in the past. I do enjoy the 3-point game. It totally changed the game of basketball. It's taken the big man out of the game. But I still enjoyed when I played when it was only 2 points.
Now, do you still get together with some of your old alumni to watch some of these games currently?
Oh yes. In fact, one of my alumni was a former basketball official. He's a golfing partner of mine. Periodically, we play golf. He's a little bit better than I am. I should say much better because he's more into it. But we've got my first team going way back to '65. The starting team is still around. And it's amazing.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, it really is. So we get together. We have functions getting together. We have a luncheon coming up at the end of August on a weekday up in the North Shore. And unfortunately, our coach is not around. But yeah, we're still doing our things. I'm the only one still actively involved in basketball.
Yeah.
As a coach, and I try to get out there and do a little shooting when I have a chance to do a little shooting and what have you. But the others are doing their thing, and but my team is still around.
That's pretty cool. If you want to call in, 508-222-1320. We have Bob Fisher, our Hall of Famer for 4 Deep Sports Talk. Basically, I don't think you lost one vote when it came to the voting. I think everybody in this room, Vin wasn't there yet. He was bugging me doing hockey games for BR, but I'm only kidding. But I don't think you lost one vote. I think it all started with Bob Rogers and us me and some of the other guys doing some research. And we kind of scratched our head and we're like, why do we remember him last year when we were doing the lift? And one of my friends was like, oh, he's definitely a Hall of Famer. I'm like, well, that sounds like a plan to me. And that's kind of how this all came. This buddy, because all these guys that are involved with this program are friends, and those sports writers you may read in the paper but you don't see on TV because they're running around doing the high school youth sports thing. But yeah, that was fun when I first saw. I mean, I knew of you, but I didn't have a chance to watch you in action. I saw you on I remember seeing you when you took your Rockland team to the state final, and Channel 5 was there, and the old Garden, and you guys weren't it then. But when they mentioned your name again, like, I know that name. I know that name sounds familiar from somewhere, right? And then one thing left to another, and we're lucky to have you in our Hall of Fame. It's awesome.
I really appreciate that. It's an honor, and I really appreciate the voting and what have you. And I've been blessed. Been blessed to have a lot of, great kids throughout my coaching career. And coaches will tell you, players make coaches. They really do. You have to have committed players, passionate players, and I've been blessed to have that type of player. And hopefully it continues. I still have the fire and still have the energy and still have, people say, when you're going to give it up? I says, when it's time. And it's not time yet.
There you go. All right, young man.
How long have you been coaching for?
43 years, going into my 44th at 3 different schools, but 43 years. I've had time off in between. When I was at Rockland, the school committee, I got appointed AD, and you couldn't do both jobs at one time. So I had to make a decision. Do I stay on as basketball coach or go on to an athletic director? And I decided, well, ADs may last longer than a coach, so I took the AD's job, and that was 9 years that I was an AD without coaching. So I gave it up for 9 years, which kind of rejuvenated me, and just watched our teams play because you couldn't do both. Then school committee changed where you could do both jobs, and the people who were on the school committee 9 years prior to that weren't on there now, and they were more athletically involved school committee members, and the job opened up, and I was, being an athletic director, I could appoint myself, but I had to go through the interviewing process, and I became coach again. And then when my son played at the neighboring school in Marshfield, I gave it up again for 3 more years because I didn't want to coach against him. And then I was able to get the job back after he graduated after 3 years. So I've had 2 leave of absences, 1 for 9, 1 for 3. So the 43, if they were consecutive, it'd be up around 50-odd years, what have you. But I did take a 9-year leave of absence and a 3-year leave of absence.
Okay. I don't know if you want to just keep on. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong, but did you start as the head baseball coach in Rockland and the assistant basketball coach?
Yes, I did. I started. There's a unique story. A unique story about how I became head baseball coach. This one will blow your mind. So my first year at Rockland, I was the assistant basketball coach. The head baseball coach, excuse me, had some problems with administration and what have you, and they relieved him of his job in February. Now, baseball was going to start up in March, and I did play baseball, But I had no inclination of applying for the baseball job, even though it was a head job. The principal was a former baseball player and a baseball coach many years ago, in his last year as a principal and ready to retire. I was walking down the hallway, and this is a true story, and in the school, in my first year there, and I was side of a couple of lockers, and there was a bunch of papers on the floor. And I'm very tidy. So I leaned over, I picked them up, and I said, this looks like just junk, white-lined paper and scribbling and so forth like that. So I wrapped it all up. I went down the end of the hallway where there was a basket. I put it in the basket. Now, I didn't see anybody in the hallway. So I go to my room, and in those days, it was a lot different. The phone would ring. So the phone rang about 5 minutes after I got into my room. This was my free period. And the principal called me. He said, do you have a few minutes to come down to my office? I said, uh-oh, this is problems. And I go down to the office, and he sat me down. He says, I saw you pick up a couple of pieces of paper in the hallway. Can you tell me why you did that? And I thought he was going to give me a lecture like I was taking somebody's property, And I said, well, I have pride in the school, blah, blah, this, and I don't like uncleanliness, and, it's a school, and I don't want anybody to walk in the school. And he said, I admire that characteristic of you. I'm looking for a baseball coach. I just know you've had some baseball experience because you coached at Bridgewater Raynham the year before with Hank Pearson as a JV coach. I said, that is correct. He said, do you want the head baseball job? I said, you're offering me the head baseball job? He says, I'm looking for a coach. And back then, you didn't apply for jobs. They just appointed you so differently. And I said, well, and I was single. I said, yeah, I'll take it, just like that. And they hadn't made the tournament in X amount of years. We made the tournament in the first year. I had two very good pitchers, by the way, and an outstanding catcher. So we had the ingredients. So I coached for 3 years, and the head basketball job opened up, and I went to basketball completely and gave up the baseball job. But I really enjoyed my 3 years as a baseball coach, and that's how I got the job, picking up paper in the hallway in a school when I had no thought of even applying for the job. And I got the job of baseball, and it was 3 phenomenal years that I had with the kids.
Awesome.
That's incredible.
Yeah. All right, we are going to take our first break. If you want to call in when we get back, 508-222-1320. You can listen online if you're having a problem picking us on the radio back home. Just go to the website, all one word, the word 4deepsportstalk.com. We have the Hall of Famer, Bob Fisher. We'll be back with him and more right after this.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to 4 Deep Sports Talk here at 1320 AM WARA. This is Catherine, a.k.a. KC, with Justin Ferreira, a.k.a. the Sportsmaster, Dominic Damiano, a.k.a. Dom, Vincent Quill, and Lucy Cabral, a.k.a. Paparazzi. We are continuing highlighting our guest for today, Bob Fisher. And Justin, we have another question.
Justin's ready. He's foaming at the bed already.
Fire away.
How has basketball evolved from the 60s?
That's a great
today?
question.
Yeah, like today versus back then.
That's an awesome question. It's changed. First of all, we were slow, non-athletic players back then compared to today's kids. There were no. I don't ever remember seeing when I went to high school a weight room. I think I saw my first one probably in college, but the athlete has changed in terms of strength, conditioning, AAUs, travel leagues, bitty basketballs, what have you. We had none of that growing up. We had in baseball you had Little League and Pony League, and I think Babe Ruth was just coming into fruition at that time. Basketball had no AAU tournaments. That we had no travel, and we had middle school basketball. But middle school basketball in Quincy, there were three junior high schools. You played each one 3 times. I mean, you never moved out of the city, but at least you had something to play for. So it's changed. I look at the quickness and the athleticism of kids now. It's astronomical. Plus, you didn't have a 3-point shot at the time. You didn't have a shot clock at the time. So it was much different. Basketball was a game of structured offenses back then. You would run an offense maybe for a minute or two before you got a good shot. And, probably all 5 kids would touch the ball, not just once, twice. And you'd work for the best shot. You would attack the basket as much as possible. If you had a kid who was 6'1" or 6'2", you would feed the post. You were always told to feed the post, feed the post, feed the post. And, which took the little kid out of the game of basketball. So it was a much different game at that time. The ball was the same size. The height of the basket was the same size. The lane was much smaller. In those days, they called the lane a key. It was very narrow, and they expanded the key into a lane now because of Russell and Chamberlain, and the bigs dominated in the key, and to keep them the 3 seconds away from the key, they expanded it to where it is nowadays. So there were a lot of changes. You didn't have as many players playing the game back then. I think one of the things back then was that when you played sports, you just didn't play basketball. You played football, you played baseball, there was no lacrosse or rugby. You played 3 sports. I mean, I think all my high school friends were all 3 sport athletes. We never spent, because there were no summer leagues back then in basketball. So you just practice what season it was. You'd play baseball all season. You don't see the kids in the baseball sandlots anymore. We'd get 9 kids in the summertime and summer vacation. We could find 9 kids, and we could find 9 kids from another part of the city, and we'd play 9-on-9 baseball or 6-on-6 baseball, whatever it might be, or 5-on-5 baseball. So sandlot baseball was big back then. It is not now. So those are the biggest changes, and not only the game has changed, society has changed. As we know, I'm looking at all the cell phones here, but parents are more involved than they were back then. Our parents just would drop us off. They wouldn't stay for anything. They just, what time's the game will get over, we'll pick you up at that time. So it's so different. They never get involved with officials. They never get involved with playing time. I don't know if my mother and father, because they had to work, were able to come to a basketball game. I'm sure they came to a couple, but it was so different back then because financially both members had to work in the family to keep things going. And sometimes you had to thumb your way to a practice or a game or take city transportation if you had it. So it was different. And if you loved the game, you did anything possible to get to the game, even if you had to run, walk, thumb, or ride a bike. And I'll tell you this, I've ridden bikes in the wintertime to the gym 3 miles away. My house was 3 miles away. I still rode a bike to get to some of my games because my parents were out working. So it's different. Things have changed.
So what don't you like about the way the game is now compared to when you played? Is there anything that comes to mind that irritates you, or just like,
yeah, the shots go up too quickly. I mean, there's no fluidity in terms of the kids are very talented, but I think the biggest changes is the explosion of the transition fast break offense in terms of shooting the ball and not moving the ball as quickly as you would like to have moved, and it's you're relying on the skill level of the players a lot now. So if you have a good player, you want that ball in the good player's hand. Needless to say, hopefully he can make the right decisions. And I think the other thing is that the kids have a lot more on their plate than they did back then. A lot more on the plate. They're probably, in all fairness, I'll give them a plus. They're more academically structured than when I went to school. Not that I wasn't, but sports was everything back then. Kids now have their priorities a little bit better, I think. They really spend a great deal of their time academically. This past year I had 9 kids in the National Honor Society. Last year the year before I had 11. So kids spend time academically and preparing for college and what have you, knowing that basketball is not the means to the end. It's just a way to get to the end. And so things have really changed. And when I had free time, I was always out playing basketball or baseball back then, even football. I loved football back then. I was not big or strong, but I did play. And so those are the changes that have happened over the number of years.
Awesome. All right, young man, I'm sorry.
No, it's all right. Just going back to the changing, how has your coaching style changed over time?
Well, the cell phone, and we get someone on TikTok and all that, that's totally changed, where you can communicate. I'll say this, you communicate. I was in the parking lot here just as I drove in, and I was communicating with one of my players. Just, he sent me a text about something, and I sent him a text back, and I said, I'll talk to you later. The communication is probably better now than it's ever been, because they teach you, and not directly, but you can see what they do, and if you don't do some of the things they do, you're going to get lost in coaching. Coaching is all about communication and connectivity. You have to be able to connect, and and it's not just as a coach. I'm not just interested in basketball. I'm interested in what they do with their lives on a daily basis. Whether they're going, the kid I was contacting is going to Virginia for a while, so we'll be connecting while he's in Virginia, and that's true, And somebody else is going to a leadership camp. Well, I'll connect during the week with that kid going to a leadership camp. Because the phones have done that, and connectivity. The kids have got to know you care. Kids got to know you're interested, and if they know you're not interested in them as a person rather than just a player, then you're going to lose them.
How do you go about building those relationships with your players? Because it sounds like that's really important to you.
Yeah, I think the key thing, if anybody would ask me, I think relationships and connectivity is a starting gate in terms of coaching right now. Communication equally is involved, etc., like that. So they know their parameters. I'll give you another interesting story. So I don't like to drift, but when I first came to Marshfield, we lost a heartbreaker down at Nauset. I can remember the score, 49-48 specifically. And Nauset's about an hour ride, now and 15-minute ride from Marshfield, down Route 3 and the Route 6 and what have you. And it's not the best of ride, although it's a straight ride. So we lose, which means it's a nightmare drive home, losing the game by 1 point. And we were decent at the time. So I walk out of the gym, the kids are on the bus. I make sure I check the locker room, make sure everything's the way it should be, and those who know me, that's the way it was exactly the way I wanted it to be. I walk in the bus and I see all these like little white lights. Now the white lights are coming from the cell phones. Here we are, we just lost a game by 1 point, and they're on the cell phones. Now I don't know if they're playing games, I don't know if they're communicating with the girlfriends or communicating with the parents. I don't think they're communicating with the parents, so all right, but girlfriends could be, and games, yep. And I went ballistic, absolutely ballistic. There was a bag up in the front of the bus, a white trash bag that was in a trash receptacle, which I took it out and said to the bus driver, I'm going to take this bag. And I went to the bus couldn't leave. I collected all the phones, collected every phone. I said, throw it in there. I don't care if it's on or off. Shut it off. You're going to lose it. I'll give them to you when we get back to Marshfield. Well, and I went through my eloquent speech of why the game was important to me and it should be important to you. And I didn't think it was as important to the kids as it was to me.
Right.
And I said, if we're going to be on the same street, it's got to be as equally as important to you as it is to me. There are street signs that say one way. This is going to be a two-way street, or it's going to be you're going to be playing winter track or playing intramural basketball somewhere. So I collected the cell phones, and I gave them back. I threw the bag near the Duxbury. Actually, I put the bag in the middle of the bus. I said, pick up your phone and don't. I said, you can turn them on now to let your parents know to pick you up, etc. like that. Well, needless to say, that was a Friday night, and because society has changed, I get called into the office on Monday morning. Can you come up and meet us? Well, they had received calls from the parents that I had taken personal property. It's one of these situations that I didn't have the rights to take their property away from me. So I said to the principal, I said, well, either I can do this or you're going to be looking for a new basketball coach because this is the way it's going to be. He said, yeah, but you got to go about it a little bit differently. So we worked to compromise. But I learned then that things that used to stay in the locker room don't stay in the locker room anymore. So you had to be very careful how you said it and who you said it to, et cetera, like that. Now, I never had to do this again, but word became, now, in the beginning of the season, I don't have rules. I said, those phones better not be on after a loss. You can turn them on after you win, but you're not going to turn, if I see those phones on, and you have to give me a very, very good reason why that particular phone is on. So then I started sitting not in the front of the bus, I started sitting in the back of the bus so I could start seeing if phones were on. And the kids did a good job, and I started trusting them, they started to believe in me, and they knew where I was coming from, and so we started communicating and connecting much better because they knew where I stood, I knew where they stood, and I was able to go back to the front of the bus. But it was a great lesson.
That's awesome.
Yep.
That's Bob Fisher, our Hall of Famer here on 4 Deep Sports Talk this Saturday. You can call in when we get back at 508-222-1320. And watch us or listen to us online, all one word, 4deepsportstalk.com. We'll be back with the Hall of Famer and more right after this.
Hey everyone, welcome back to 4 Deep Sports Talk here at 1320 AM WARA. We are back with the 4 Deep Sports Talk crew with Bob Fisher as our guest. But before I go on, I want to give a shout out to Kyron on TikTok for getting me to 1,000 likes, and thank you so much for the follow back.
All right, old man, it's all yours.
Okay. Before the 3-point line, you used to hit deep shots. Do you wish the 3-pointing line was there when you played basketball?
No, we kind of answered that, and no, I don't, because I like the game the way we played it back then. I was on the state basketball committee back 0.9 minutes. I was with, I think, 3 or 4 negative votes against it. As a coach, I was against it when it came in. Now I'm for it, but back then so no, I don't. The unfortunate part about the 3-point kid, I had a camp last week. Kids come into the gym. If you don't know the kids, they come into the gym, and they don't start with form shooting or layups. They come in and fire the ball away from 3-point line. And that's how some of these young kids warm up nowadays. That kind of blows my mind. That if the 3-point line wasn't there, maybe structurally, fundamentally, their shooting mechanics would be a lot better. But kids are much better shooters now than they were back when I played. Much better. They put more time into the shooting. There's a lot of great shooters around, a lot of great coaches in this area at the high school level specifically that emphasize shooting and work on shooting. So I think what happens, to answer your question, you spend more time in practice with drills for 3-point shooting than you did way back. So it changes your philosophy and how what you run off. And the ideal situation, the game has changed where it's more of spacing and 5 out or 4 out, whatever you might like to do, depending on what you have. And if you have 5 out, you want 5 shooters. So when I started playing basketball back when I played, we had a shooter, we had a ball handler, we had a rebounder, we had a defender, we had an athlete. So the shooter got the ball 90% of the time. The athlete was just a tough kid that would go through the walls. You needed a defender to stop the other player's best shooter. You didn't need 2 defenders back then because most teams only had 1 shooter. So the game has evolved where now most teams have 4 or 5 shooters, and you can stop maybe 1, but it's hard to stop 2 or 3 because you don't have that many good defenders.
There you
So I got one going back to coaching, kind of.
Yep.
How do you maneuver the fine line of trying to make the kids have fun while also being serious and focus on winning?
That's very, very interesting because, kids. I think your number one rule, and I'll put this down when I pass out my beginning of the season. The first rule I have is it has to be fun, or you shouldn't be here. So that's number one. It has to be fun. It shouldn't be here. Some kids treat it as life altering. I mean, it's the depression you see kids when they miss a shot or fail or don't make a team or don't get in. So somehow your personality has to dictate fun at practice. That was a hard adjustment for me. I was very, very serious at practice when I started coaching, very, very serious. I took every turnover very seriously. I took every non-box out very, very seriously. But if it becomes an obsession with me, then the game ain't going to become fun. So you try to implement it, and you try to do it with drills, competitive drills. One of the things I do at practice that in the first 10 or 15 minutes of everybody's practice, I'll find something good to say about everybody, whether that player is a great player, a decent player, a so-so player, or just a bench player. So that the kid feels, hey, he's thinking of me. He mentioned my name, and even if he just made a layup or deflected a pass or something like that, you try to take care of the last 7 or 8 kids on your team because they could be the most important, and you find good things to say about them to make it fun so they'll come back the next day. He's thinking of me, etc., like that. And so yeah, you change. I've changed. I think you have to adjust to today's athlete. Do I still have my sternness? Yeah, I still have that, but it's not 100% all the time. Maybe at 60% or 65%, whatever it might be. But kids need reassurance. Kids need attaboys. Mental health is a serious issue in our country. Serious issue with high school kids. Serious issue with athletes. And you've got to recognize it. And as a coach, you've got to see what kids may be in that mental health state. And you've got to do everything in your power without directly talking to that kid yet to make him feel good, her, in my case, him, because I coach boys, feel good about themselves. Keep reassuring that kid. And if you see I don't hesitate playing a kid a couple of minutes in a game with 4 other good players out. I don't hesitate doing that anymore. Years ago, I used to, because that may be life-altering and life-changing for that young man. So I think that's where you try to make fun. Yeah. And you got to remember, when you have those 15, and I have 17 kids, I usually keep 17, you have to treat each one of them like they're your own sons. If you don't, then you don't belong in this profession. So they're like my 17 sons for at least a year.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. So I have a two-part question. My first one is, and you kind of touched on it a little bit, what does it take, what does Bob Fisher look for to make his team and an athlete?
Say that again?
What does it take for an athlete to make your team, the Marshfield team? What does Coach Fisher look for in an athlete?
Well, I think number one is a work ethic. You look at it, kids got to have an impeccable work ethic, because when there again, I go back to I won't elaborate much. My college coach was very upset with the way we participated at Bentley one day, and there was a yellow school bus outside of practice. When we went to practice, it was a guidance center on the Fenway. Back then, Bentley had a gym there to use, and we didn't realize what the bus was for. We went in the bus, and he took us to the Jimmy Fund building. And we went to the Jimmy Fund building, and I'd never been to the Jimmy Fund building. And to see those kids who may not survive that much longer, some had permanent disease, some were curable, some weren't, and we walked out of there after 2 hours. I won't go through what we went through, but I felt like, boy, what a lesson this is. And his lesson to us was, would you want to change places with these kids in the Jimmy Fund building? And of course, none of us wanted to change places. He said, well, none of you are playing up to God-given abilities. Work ethic is the most important characteristic that you can carry through life. And because if you don't, you're cheating those kids in that particular, the Jimmy Fund building, or those kids that can't be out who are handicapped, physically handicapped. So impeccable work ethic is the number one thing I look for. Number two, you look for a kid that, has a great deal of respect. Not just respect for the game, but respect for elders, respect for themselves. Like I mentioned, picking up things. We're very tidy about picking up things like that. Of course, you look for ability. Don't misunderstand me. You're looking for a kid who's very good, who can change the course of a game, either by a rebound or a defensive play, et cetera, like that. But you're not going to. All 15 players aren't going to be like that. So, and your other players, you're looking for players who can do what I was just telling you about, who respect life, who respect what the work ethic is about, who have a great attitude, who are a good student in the classroom, and there's many stories I can give you, but those are just some of the characteristics that you look for, etc., like that. And when I come into a new school, like I've been at a couple of schools, and you don't know who the kids are, so those are the things you first look for when you pick a team.
Now, what about coaching these kids? I know it's changed from when you won the state title in Rockland, and of course down here in Marshfield. I'm thinking about all the times where I'm broadcasting and I'm watching the teams warm up, and some teams you'll see them warm up, they're working on taking a foul. That'll be part of their warm, but they'll have every corner of the half, they'll use half the court, and there'll be a kid at each end, and the kid driving will push him, and he'll fall back, learn how to take a foul. What's the hardest thing you see, even if they do have God-given ability, to teach these kids, to try to get in their heads? I was just curious. Does anything come to mind?
Well, the hardest thing I have in terms of a coach is teaching them to communicate on the court.
Okay.
And that's huge. Communication, you can talk with your feet, but when your feet have that slippery mark, that when you hit the floor, you talk with your voice. I like them to talk both ways, and getting them to talk to me is worse than pulling teeth. We just, to be good defensively and to trust one another, if you can communicate with each kid on the court, that develops a culture of connectivity. And if you're not communicating, there's no connectivity. There's no culture. You need the communication. I went to a Celtic Indiana Pacers game. I was able to sit 6 rows behind the bench. Seats were given to me. The communication by the pros is astronomical. It may not be in the language that I can use,
right?
But they are communicating. And you can hear, I said, wow, the vocabulary is something else. But they're always talking out there. And if the professional athlete can talk, then down at all, a high school kid can talk. So communication is the hardest skill that I have teaching these kids. And, and some kids are taciturn. By that I mean they're quiet. They're quiet, and sometimes it's hard to drive it out of them.
Yeah.
But I'll just say this word, say this word, say that, say the word help, say the ball, I got ball. Try to eliminate what they say. That to me is hard, and I find that very difficult. So that's the hardest thing I have to communicate. The other, other than that, I think that, the thing that is when you're not with the team. For example, we have a summer league games, and if the kids are injured, I expect them to be there, unless they are incapable of being there. If they're sick and they're missing a day at school, that's fine. But if they're injured, all good athletes will stay with their team. You never leave your team, whether you're injured. If you're sick and you've got a flu or something like that, absolutely you go. But so you want to be with your team. Kids have to be with as kids as much as possible, and so those are the things that I think are the hardest to teach. Communication being at the top of the list, because if you can't communicate, you can't play defense. If you can't communicate, you're not going to be a good offensive team. If you can't say swing the ball, you can't say etc. like that. So developing leaders, that leads me to the next point. The second thing is developing great senior leadership. And you don't develop it in the senior year, you hope you develop it in the sophomore or junior year, so when they become seniors, you're not teaching them it all over again.
Right.
So leadership is ongoing all throughout the year.
I love hearing that. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, leadership is ongoing. In fact, my kids will tell you we meet, my two leaders, we meet for pizza and water, what have you, and we talk about the leadership, the responsibilities as leaders, and not just in the classroom, in the community projects with their team, what have you. So communication and leadership, I think, are the two biggest things. If you don't have good leaders, and that's not just your captains, that's everybody.
He's Bob Fisher, our Hall of Famer. We're going to take our last break. When we get back, 508-222-1320. We'll be back with Bob Fisher, Coach Bob Fisher, right after this.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to 4D Sports Talk here at the news station, 1320 AM Attleboro. We are going to keep going with our interview. All right. I wanted to ask, what did you bring to the table tell Marshfield from the other schools, two schools that you coached as well?
What did I bring to the table?
Yes.
Probably my energy, my enthusiasm, my passion, my fire. And I think those were ingredients, and the other thing would be care. The care meaning that you care you're going to for them, you got to remember as a coach that during the season of time, you probably see the particular player or players on your team more so than maybe their father or mother, because they get up in the morning, they wake them up, they've gone to school, they don't spend the day, then they come to practice, and practice could go until 7 or 8 o'clock at night, then they go home, they have their dinner, and they go in the room, and they stack up the next morning. So you visually are with them for about 2.5 to 3 hours in contact with them. So the impact you have on those kids for those 3 months, for those 3 hours, you almost have to have an extension with the parent. So you try to bring that fatherly image to the, and I'd use motherly as well, but this is, I'm a father, I'm not a mother, but I love to have that motherly that my wife has with our sons and what have you, etc. like that. So you got to remember, you're seeing that. So that's what I bring to them. I'm going to be their parent for 3 hours, and I got to do what's best for them, and try to mold them to be even what their parents want them to be.
Nice. What do you got on?
What is your favorite memory while coaching?
Well, there are a lot.
Yeah.
But, we won a state championship when I was blessed to win a state championship, and on a couple of occasions. Those are the greatest memories. The bus rides home, the bus from police, fire, ambulances, and having done it more than once. The second time always tastes sweeter because you don't know if you're ever going to get back, and who knows if I'm ever going to get back. Ironically, last night I ran into Ironically, I played golf. We won a chip in '72. What I tell you is factual. I played golf at Ritter's yesterday, one of those best ball situations, and one of the players I played with had 19 points in a state final in '72. He was my golfing partner yesterday. And then last night, my son came running out from a restaurant. He said, "Dad, you got to come down to the restaurant. Joe Coppins is down there." We went to championship in '04, and Joe was up from Naples. He didn't know where I live. I lived right near a restaurant in Hemrock. I ran right on there. And I was with two players on those state championship teams. But another great memory is the game this year. Scoring 100 points, which I'm blind, against a team that had won 2 state championships in the last 3 years. Wow. And they probably would have won 3 in a row if it wasn't for COVID. But there are a lot of great memories. But the best memory is coaching kids. I'm going to tell you right now, to see the joy in kids when kids do something well or when they get into a game, what have you. The memories you have of the kids. And victories are great, championships are great, but it's the memories you have of you're blessed with the players you coach, because players make coaches. Believe me, they make coaches. I've never scored a basket, never made a pass in a game, never had a deflection. The kids do all of that. And so your memories of your kids, and you always stay in contact. One last story, I was blessed to have a kid that's an astronaut, went up in space for Columbia. Wow. We went to the launch, and went to 2 launches, got invited, got pitched and stuff like that. So you never know what's going to happen to kids. He went to the Air Force Academy. A coach flew intercepted planes on 9/11 over in the in the Pennsylvania area. He was out of Otis Air Force Base. He was on a plane that intercepted the plane that went down on the ground. Wow. And so 2 players, and you never know what's going to happen to your players. And so I've had an astronaut, another pilot that's been involved, and I've got guys with doctors, and I'm sure lawyers and what have you. So those are the joys of coaching. Those are the greatest memories. Going to a shuttle, there's nothing like something like that to see this country and what's happened.
Wow, that's incredible.
That's unbelievable.
Amazing.
I've never met a coach that had an astronaut for a
Right?
player.
And
Never.
Right?
Yeah.
Right?
And I've been doing this a long time. That's incredible.
And he's been twice.
Wow.
All right, but we got about 3 minutes left. You got any shout-outs you want to come to mind? You want to shout out to?
Well, the shout-outs I would have to be all to the kids I've coached, the parents' support. And I've been blessed over the years to have great support of parents through all the 3 schools I've been at. But the kids are great, but they need the parental support at home, what have you. And administrations, you have the support of administrations and school committees. But the biggest shout out is to the players. I mean, coaches are who they are because of players.
Right.
And the biggest shout out would be to the players I've coached, and how blessed I have my players, and how blessed I've been fortunate. I'm a better person because of the players I've coached. Kids make coaches better people, better persons, and better role models. kids make us. You're afraid to deviate from being a role model because of the kids as you coach. And I don't know if I'd be who I am today or the parent I am today if it wasn't for the kids I've coached. So I owe everything to my players that I've coached over all these 43-odd years. Believe it or not, you may be redundant and saying it's actually true. I'm blessed, and I get emotional of the players. And the hardest part is when you have to go to their wakes and funerals, and that's the negativity situation. When that happens and they pass away, and those things do happen, and they get sick, and and I've been actually many of them.
Well, Bob, we think of you on the station. I can speak for Jim Jones when he's saying congratulations on the Hall of Fame award.
Thank you.
And I know he's listening now. He's me something said. No, he's a good guy. But we hope you all enjoy this hour. We had the distinct privilege of highlighting Hall of Famer Bob Fisher from Marshfield, Rockland. We have an excellent video. If you go back on our YouTube page, you can see the whole ceremony of our 5th annual basketball award ceremony. I'm going to be politically correct, but linguistically correct before we get to this last break. Let me see, and I think we almost have it, right? Next week, I know what I forgot to say. So next week, this show will re-air. We'll all be away for the 4th of July, so you can listen to Bob's interview. Bob, you can listen to interviews on the website again, and they'll replay it again, so that'll be pretty cool.
And of course, I'll be
That'll
sending
be my
out
4th of July
pictures
party. With my
Right,
party,
and then she'll have pictures, and then this will be Office 2 page on the Teleview Connect.
and edit it down.
And edit it down. That's what I meant to say. All right, now I got time to do this. For Lucy Brawl, Catherine Conley, a.k.a. Casey, the Sportsmaster, Justin Ferreira, our great intern, Vincent Quill from Quinnipiac. We will catch you next time. Everyone have a fantastic and safe holiday weekend.